Hello and welcome into the Legacy Archive. My name is Sam and I will be reviewing Lorwyn Eclipsed today for our beautiful Legacy format. I just went to a pre-release last night. We had 80 people, totally sold out. You couldn't get freaking collector boosters in there. You couldn't really get much, and it was packed elbow to elbow, but I had a great time. Set's been really fun so far. I didn't open any of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle promos like I've been seeing floating around online, but I was able to pick up some collector boosters in a local shop today, though, and I will be cracking both of these. I will crack one at the beginning of the review and one at the end, so a little teaser for you, so you stick around. So yeah, let's get right into the pack. All right, we have Prideful Feastum, River Guide's Reflexes, Biovile Bogart, Tributary Balter, Kulrath Mystic, Soulbright Seeker, Wanderwine Farewell, Voracious Tome Skimmer, Thought Weft Imbuer. Alright, now we get to the juice, people. We got Mornsong Area, nice. Great callback to an awesome character from original Lorwyn. Puka's Covenant. I love the art on this card. This like dog is like telling these gnomes, or like just embedding knowledge into them or something. It's very funny to me. Oh wow, double-sided steam vents. Yes, that is beautiful. I'll take that all day. Ooh, Ashling Rekindle. This is sweet. Another flip card. Oh, what is that? Sorry, Ashling. Let's move you to the side. Oh my goodness. Look at this card. Holy crap. Guess this isn't, maybe there's like a shattered foil version of this, but either way, regular foil is looking gorgeous. This card's awesome. I was just looking at this card today to purchase it, so let's go. And a Kitkin and Elf token in the back. All right, let's get into the set review now. So the way I'm going to go through the set review today, the first 4 cards are going to be cards I think are the standouts of the set and things I will expect to be seeing on the MTGO leagues in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And then I will go through in Wooburg order the rest of the cards that I think are kind of on the fringes. Like I always say with these set reviews, I really like to be optimistic. I think there's a lot of stuff that falls through the cracks that people miss or don't get a chance to test. So I do think there are some cards that people are maybe overlooking or are just maybe small glue pieces to fringe archetypes that are just going to boost them just a little bit. But let's get into our first card here, Formidable Speaker. This got previewed a very long time ago. It's 2 and a green for a 2/4. When this creature enters, you may discard a card. If you do, search your library for a creature card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle. And then for a generic and tap, you can untap target permanent. You're gonna take a guess what that target permanent is gonna be. It's gonna be Gaia's Cradle 99% of the time, but it is an elf itself, so it will be probably slotting into traditional elves, and you can untap a Priest of Titania or any other high mana producing elves in that deck. But I really like it in Cradle Control. You know, you can play this on turn 2 pretty consistently with a Mana Dork on turn 1. So it lets you go find a Badger Mole Cub, find an Endurance, even find a Crater Hoof if you have enough mana with Gaia's Cradle. And I love that it just says discard a card, not discard a creature card. But yeah, great card. I love that it's a 2/4 too. It doesn't die to bolts. You can kind of contend on the battlefield a little bit, especially if you get a couple Exalted triggers going. This card isn't going to be non-threatening. So they definitely, you know, a lot of times these cards are like all these recruiter type cards are, you know, 1/1s or 2/2s, 2/1s that just kind of are not competing with today's stats. So I really like everything about this card. Just really screams high playability. So definitely looking out for that one. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. And the next one we're going to be talking about is also probably a no-brainer. Although this card I think is probably going to be less impressive than a lot of people in, like, especially like the CEH community are hyping it up. This is Hexing Squelcher, of course, 1 in a red Goblin Sorcerer for a 2/2. The spell can't be countered. Ward, pay 2 life. Spells you control can't be countered, and other creatures you control have Ward, pay 2 life. Now this is immediately comparable to Spider-Punk that just came out a few months ago that has been creeping to a lot of mono-red stompy sideboards. The fact that Spider-Punk stops the damage, or damage can't be prevented, is on Spider-Punk. That stops the ring protection, so you are able to push through damage on a turn where your opponent thinks you're safe. So they do play slightly different roles. This one might be a little bit more applicable outside of just mono red sideboards though. I think Goblins obviously loves this. This might be a 3 or 4 of in that deck. Your Muxus isn't going to get countered. Your Tutors aren't going to get countered, so it's just kind of like another Cavern Souls that can attack your opponent. And Ward Pay 2 life is a lot, so your best, your opponent's going to have to target their swords or their Lightning Bolt at this first, and you're most likely already in an aggressive deck. So that damage is going to matter. I also like it in the Ocelot Pride decks. I think Amped Raptor into this would be incredible. Helps you protect your Guide of Souls and Ocelot Pride and your Ajani, things like that. So I think that this card will see a lot of play across a lot of aggressive creature decks, but I don't see it being in something like Blue-Red Delver though. In Delver, you already do a pretty good job against 1-for-1ing a lot of counter spells with your Dazes and Force of Wills. So I don't think the can't be countered part of that just for a 2-mana 2/2 is going to be worth it. Yes, the damage can add up, but it's not evasive, which that deck really loves. So definitely see it in go wide red creature decks. Next up in my expecting to see play category is Moonshadow. For single black, you have a 7/7 Menace Elemental. I like that already. This creature enters with 6 -1/-1 counters on it. When one or more permanent cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, very importantly, while this creature has a -1/-1 counter on it, remove a -1/-1 counter from this creature. So I think Stalactite Stalker is where everybody's head goes with Moonshadow immediately. Another kind of 1-mana Grog creature that's just going to kind of beat your opponent down with Menace. That Menace is really threatening once it becomes a 3/3 or 4/4 already. So I like, the Mishra's Bauble, Wasteland, fetch lands, Surveil a permanent into the graveyard off of a fetch land. You can even get it twice in a turn. I think, those decks are already playing those cards because for Nethergoyf and Stalactite Stalker already. So I think adding another 1-mana threat is great. It's going to be a 2/2 pretty quickly, probably a lot of times on the same turn it is played. So you don't have to really worry about Bowmasters nabbing it. And you can even go as deep as something like Lotus Petal. Maybe those decks get even more aggressive with what they're doing and just cheating on mana. So I do like Moonshadow a lot, specifically in mono black aggro. I don't really see it outside of that. I don't think it's a Dimir threat. I still think Nethergoyf is always going to beat it out when you add a second or third color to your deck. So, but I do think it's going to be quite impactful in mono black aggro. And that deck, again, is I always feel like is very underexplored. There's not a lot of people working on it, but it really does get the job done, and it's a very cheap deck to pick up, so I always recommend people try out mono black aggro once in a while. And then this next card is kind of the honorable mention of the podium of cards I was already talking about. This is Kirol, Attentive First Year. We have one of the Strixhaven students who's on a little adventure here. For 1 and Boros Hybrid, so 3 mana 3/3. Vampire Cleric, you can tap 2 untapped creatures you control to copy target triggered ability you control. You may choose a new target for the copy, activate only once each turn. So I think specifically in Death and Taxes, this card is extremely impactful. Going through the list of creatures that this is going to be able to double with those already entering, so you have this, you basically just need this out, and anytime something is going to trigger, you're going to have enough bodies to tap the activated ability here. You can double Solitude, Stoneforge Mystic, Recruiter of the Guard, Orcish Bowmaster, White Orchid Phantom, Skyclave Apparition, Witch Enchanter, and Overlord of the Balemerc. Those are all, that's like 90% of the creature suite in Death and Taxes. It's a Yorion deck, so you can kind of get away with some fringe playable stuff on the sides that's just kind of boosting your game plan. But I do think a double Solitude is so impactful. Stoneforge, you can go get Meteor Sword and Pre-War Former War, which will, if they deal with the Stoneforge, you can pre-war it back and kind of do it all over again. So maybe you want a little more extensive equipment package if you're kind of going all in on Kirol here. But I think this card is very sneaky under the radar. I mean, there's a lot of blowout potential here with something like White Orchid Phantom too. You know, if you're playing against Delver and they have, you know, a deck that's noted to have one basic, or you play against Eldrazi, which is just like usually playing the one waste, and you double that trigger, you know, one of those is just going to be a strip mine. So, you know, a double Overlord of the Balemurk trigger, even just when you impend it for the first time, that's going to, you know, basically draw you 2 cards. So yeah, I really am high on this card, and I haven't really seen anybody else talking about it. So I hope to see this one floating around online, and I might try it out in a few leagues just to kind of back up what I'm saying here. So now we're going to go in Wooburg order for just a little more fringe cards that I think have a chance of seeing play, or just going to boost up a fringe archetype, but not really pull it into the foreground of the legacy contenders. First up, we have Reese the Evermore. For 1 and a white, you have a 2/2 flash elf warrior. When Reese enters, another target creature you control gains persist until end of turn. And for a white mana and tap it, you can remove any number of counters from target creature control and activate that only as a sorcery. I could see this in Death and Taxes. You know, with Felia and Orcish Bowmaster, those are 2 flash threats where you have options now as the Death and Taxes deck, where you're not just jamming at sorcery speed. So having, you know, maybe 2 risks in your deck is not a bad idea. This can save a Solitude that's being evoked, and you can get double Swords of Plowshare or something. This can, you know, save a Stoneforge Mystic, get it back. It can save a Recruiter of the Guard to give you a double trigger, even though it would die right away. So there are some X ones in that deck. So I don't think it's always perfect every time, but it is a cute little card that can give you some extra value where your opponent doesn't see it, and then you can remove the +1/+1 counter from the Solitude or something, and have it get back up to 3 power, which can be relevant in some races. But the other deck I can kind of see this creating is a green-white kind of Badger Mole Cub Dark Depths deck, because if you Badger Mole Cub the Dark Depths, then you can use Riss's ability, activated ability, to remove all of the ice counters from the now creature Dark Depths. So, you know, with a Yavimaya on turn 2, Badger Mole Cub can make the Dark Depths a creature, and then on turn 3 you play Savannah, and then flash out Riss. I mean, that's a little janky around, but, you know, I think maybe if you explore Badger Mole Cub in a lot of those Selesnya Depths decks, you know, the traditional kind of crop rotation shell, then, you know, maybe we get to a point where you can rely on this Reese Dark Depths combo. So I don't know, that's a little fringe, but it's just kind of a fun little interaction that I was made aware of. And then getting into blue, we have a Glenalendra Guardian here, 2 and a blue for a 3/4 Fairy Wizard with Flash, Flying, and this creature enters with a -1/-1 counter on it, so it's a 2/3 when it enters. And for 1 and a blue, you can remove a counter from this creature, counter target non-creature spell. Its controller draws a card. So this one's just like maybe a little bit overcosted for what we usually expect in Legacy. I mean, 3 mana is a weird spot to be. That's like Hull Breacher, and Tishana's Tidebinder. So I feel like maybe some decks that are already messing around with those cards might want to try out a Glenalendra Guardian. So I mean, Ancient Tomb blue decks, you know, that's like mono blue Cloud Post basically. There's not, you know, I wouldn't play this in Show and Tell or Sneak and Show or anything. But, you know, it's just interesting. It kind of puts a little pressure on your opponent while you're holding up a counter spell for like a Doomsday or something. So this is only going to really shine against hardcore like kind of combo decks. So it increases its clock as it counters the critical spell. So might be hard for them to remove or something like that. So while you get to keep up your Force of Wills and things like that too. So I don't know. Might be a card that surprises some people, but I don't really expect this one to see play. But just thought I'd mention it. Next up, we have our pair of Merfolk here. Merfolk didn't get as much as I thought it might, from my perspective. I'm in no means a Merfolk expert, but I thought these 2 guys would be the most interesting for the kind of current shell that we see going around. So we have Silvergill Mentor here. For 1 and a blue, it's a 2/1 Merfolk Wizard. As additional cost to cast a spell, you can behold a Merfolk or pay 2. Behold is a new mechanic from Lorwyn Eclipsed. To behold a Merfolk, choose a Merfolk you control or reveal a Merfolk from your hand. When this creature enters, create a 1/1 white and blue Merfolk token. So I think it's going to be, like, you know, pretty easy to behold a Merfolk, especially if you play a turn 1 creature, or you're of course going to have one in your hand. So I think this is just always a 2-mana 2/1 that makes a 1/1. So with lords and messing with your opponent's mana to give them an island, and then you have unblockable stuff. I mean that's a lot of damage over 2 bodies. This is unfortunately not a great card to Aether Vial in, so maybe that actually prevents this from seeing play. But 2 mana makes 2 bodies. I think Merfolk hasn't really had a chance to have something like that before. And then the other Merfolk I wanted to mention is Sig Wanderwine Wisdom. For 1 and a blue, you get a 2/2 legendary creature Merfolk Wizard. It can't be blocked, and when this creature enters or transforms into Wanderwine Wisdom, target creature gains when this creature deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker. Draw a card until end of turn. This is very wordy, bear with me here. At the beginning of your first main phase, you can pay a white if you do transform Sig. And on the backside, it's a 2/2 that can't be blocked. It's a white creature now. And when this creature transforms into Sig Wanderwine Shield, target creature you control gets protection from each color until your next turn. And then as well on this side, at the beginning of your first main phase, you can pay a blue and transform it back into the other side, which will going to give you the Ophidian effect there. Most Merfolk decks are mono blue, so I do understand that. This just kind of gives you a little bit of value. It already can't be blocked, so if you're kind of struggling to do the Spreading Seas effect on your opponent, then this one is just kind of guaranteed to give you some damage and a little bit of value. I think that the toughest part with this card though is that paying that white mana, your deck's going to have to kind of change. You might have to play, Cavern Souls isn't able to pay for that mana, so you have to play one of these other creature lands these newer creature lands that allow you to do that. So again, this one's going to be very, very fringe for Merfolk, but it just gives you a little bit of value. I like that it says draw a card. You can kind of mom one of your creatures, so could be impactful enough to just kind of get in there as a one of. Yeah, I know they play Sveliun of the Sea and Sky, which is kind of their little draw engine, but this one kind of gives you the value immediately as soon as it's played, and then is unblockable from there. So maybe it can kind of sneak in that spot for Merfolk. All right, moving on to black, we have Bitterbloom Bearer. For black, you get a 1/1 flash flying fairy rogue. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose a life and create a 1/1 blue-black fairy creature token with flying. Where have we seen this for? Of course, Bitter Blossom, a card that has not seen a legacy play in a very long time, if ever. I don't really remember seeing it when I first started playing the format in about 2018. So, the fact that it's on the creature does change a lot of things. It's in that Bowmaster mana, so again, gives you options depending on what you want to do on their end step. You don't have to throw the Bowmaster out there. You can kind of throw another threat out there, see what they do, and then you can react further from there with the new information. So black is going to be tough, though. I don't see this in multicolor decks, or more than 2-color decks, of course. But I do think it could be interesting for Loampox. A deck is playing for Orcish Bowmasters. Gives you some extra stuff to sack to your Smallpox when you cast it. We've already seen the Humidity and Hatchery, of course, be able to beef up a ton of flying creatures and poop those out when you want. Obviously, that's much stronger than Bitterbloom Bearer. I don't think it's kind of equal in that way, but again, just a card that could provide a little bit of value, some evasive threats, helps you block in the air if needed. Does kind of get trounced by Tamiyo, unfortunately. But actually both sides, I'm just realizing that now. So maybe that's exactly what holds us at. It also dies the Orcish Bowmaster, so don't want to hang on this card too long, but obviously it's a really sweet card. And actually just bought a print of that from Rebecca Guai when I was over in Eternal Weekend Europe, so of course I'm gonna shout out this card. Also at Pride decks, I think this could be interesting too. Your Goddess Souls is gonna love this. That's gonna offset your life loss. And it also makes tokens for the Outlaw Pride, so if you are able to get the Monarchy, you can make a bunch of fairies immediately. So, maybe look out for it in the future if some people eventually want to try it out. All right, so moving on to, I'm just going to call this the Goblin section. I didn't want to break these down into individual cards to talk about because they're all just going to go in the same archetype. So leading us off is, of course, the legendary creature Grub Storied Matriarch. For 2 block, you get a 2/1 Goblin Warlock with Menace, and when this creature enters or transforms into Storied Matriarch, return up to 1 target Goblin card from your graveyard to your hand. At the beginning of your first main phase, you can pay a red if you do transform Grub. And on the backside, it's a red creature with Menace, also a 2/1. And when it attacks, you may blight 1. If you do, create a tapped and attacking creature. A tapped and attacking token that's a copy of the blighted creature, except it has at the beginning of your end step, sacrifice this token, and then on the first main phase, you can pay a black and transform it back to the front side. So, you know, I think both sides have a lot of power to them. Obviously, the first one just recycling one of your goblins that died, especially with Skirk Prospector, sacrificing things for mana early on. You can almost just play this on turn 2 and get back what you sacrificed. But I really like the backside is what really intrigues me about Grub. I think being able to copy your Muxus, if you get a Muxus out and then blight it immediately, you can get a copy of that. There's also, you know, just a kind of various ETB triggers in these Goblin decks that would maybe like that blight. So again, Goblins has been traditionally Rakdos as of late. So you know, I don't think the mana is any problem for that deck. It's already playing a lot of bad lands. So I think this can be quite exciting, and I would expect this to be like maybe a one-of in those decks. You know, you can tutor for it too with your Goblin Matron if needed. And then the next 3 goblins I'm just going to talk about real quickly. Mud Button Curse Tosser Black for a 2/1. This is just a cost to cast this spell. You may behold the goblin or pay 2. This creature can't block, and when this creature dies, destroy target creature the opponent controls with power 2 or less. So along the lines of the Skirk Prospector, you can kind of control when you sacrifice this to kill something. I think that's not a bad kind of play pattern. If you have Lords, you know, this is just a nice Savannah Lions you can get down and get it beefed up in a few turns. But not a lot to write home about. I think it can just kind of be a nice little utility, but maybe it doesn't get there, and that dies trigger isn't going to be as good as I'm imagining. Next up, we have Taster of Wares. This is 2 and a black for a 3/2 Goblin Warlock, and when this creature enters, target opponent reveals X cards from their hand, where X is the number of goblins you control. You choose one of those cards. That player exiles it. If an instant or sorcery is exiled this way, you may cast it for as long as you control this creature, and mana can be spent of any type to cast that spell. So, kind of a weird one here, but you know, with a lot of the goblins being able to provide tokens immediately when they come in, you're gonna maybe be able to do this for 4 or 5 fairly consistently, and it's just kind of like a Thoughtseize creature in a way. You know, it's going to be a little embarrassing if you can only get like 2 or 3 cards revealed from their hand, but you know, you can take a Brainstorm, but if you see their whole hand, you can take like a Swords to Plowshares. That's going to be critical for them or something they needed, or just get rid of a combo piece that you're not into. So it's kind of like a really weird effect. We don't really see ETB creatures stealing stuff from your opponent's hand, especially exiling it. So there's a lot of upside. The ceiling is very high on this card. Just going to be see if the floor is going to be good enough for it to get there. Next up, we have Eclipsed Boggart. This is hybrid Rakdos, so it's a 3 mana 2/3. Goblin Scout. When this creature enters, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a Goblin, Swamp, or Mountain card from among them and put them in your hand. So this reminds me a lot of Goblin Ringleader, which is a 4 mana 2/2 that enters and reveal the top 4 cards, and you put all goblins revealed this way into your hand. So this being 1 less mana is pretty exciting. Although, you know, a lot of goblins I still see playing stuff like Ancient Tomb, so maybe if you're playing an Ancient Tomb version of goblins, you don't want to even touch this, and Ringleader is going to be much better for the mana requirements in a deck like that. But I think if you're playing more traditional goblins without Ancient Tomb, this being able to find you a land is kind of interesting. Like if you really need the land, like just being able to kind of not whiff off the top, if your entire deck is just all goblins, Aether Vial, and lands, like you're pretty high to hit on something like this. So I don't know, just a nice little value card. That reminds me of Ringleader, so don't have much else to say about it other than that. All right, moving on to more widespread spells here. We got Requiting Hex. I don't know, I'm terrible at these pronunciations. Black for an instant. At the additional cost to cast this spell, you may blight 1, and you destroy target creature with mana value 2 or less. If the spell's additional cost is paid, you gain 2 life. So obviously reminds us a lot of Fatal Push. You know, Fatal Push isn't always a 4-of in a lot of decks. Sometimes it's split between main and side, or it's all just side, especially in something like, you know, Dimir Midrange, Dimir Tempo, whatever you want to call those decks. But I think if you are a deck that is already on 4 Fatal Pushes and you are struggling against aggro decks, I guess, you can look to a 5th copy in the sideboard. So that's all I really see with this card. I don't think the gaining 2 life is really all that big a deal, but could obviously help you in a pinch. So there's some random upside there. So I think if you're already playing 4 Fatal Push and you just want even more ways to remove creatures, this could be your ticket. All right, moving on to a card for Dredge, which I just constantly love playing leagues of, even though I can't get better than about a 3/2. Mufuz Van Gogh, please help me out. So this is Twilight Diviner. For 2 and a black, you get a 3/3 Elf Cleric. When this creature enters, you can surveil 2. And when one or more other creatures you control enter, if they entered or were cast from a graveyard, create a token that's a copy of one of them. This ability only triggers once each turn. Obviously, I don't like seeing triggers once each turn. That's very sad, but this obviously works with Narcomoeba, Poxwalkers out of Dredge, which is a very powerful card. Ox of Agonis this works with really well. You get double Ox of Agonis. You're just going to dredge like 1,000,000 at that point, and you have 2 giant creatures that are about to attack. And then, you know, if you dread return out a Grave Troll or something, when you're in that kind of point of the game, you get double Grave Troll. So maybe this isn't a 4/7 Dredge, but it's just a nice little tool that you can have available to you that you can realistically cast in a deck that's trying not to cast too many spells or even get to 3 mana all that often. But, you know, if you played this, surveilled 2, were able to find something, or had already had some kind of Narcomoebas or Bridge from Below tokens out that you wanted to dread return back something while this is in play, I do think the upside is quite high on this, and I just love Dredge tools. I think the deck is amazing and is super flexible and always has fun stuff to mess around with. So always love seeing new Dredge related cards. All right, so for our lone green card of the set review, we have Bristlebane Battler. For 1 and a green, you have a 6/6 Trample Ward 2 Kithkin Soldier. This creature enters with 5 -1/-1 counters on it, and whenever another creature you control enters while this has a -1/-1 counter on it, remove a -1/-1 counter from this creature. The only place I can kind of see this is maybe Cradle Control wants a little bit of a switch up out of the sideboard in certain matchups, in some fair matchups. The Ward 2 is very annoying. This reminds me a lot of Patchwork Automaton out of the Affinity Stompy decks, which has seen a little more of a resurgence after kind of being in and out of the list for a couple years. But this, you know, I can imagine play patterns with this where you turn 1 elf, turn 2 this into another elf or something. So it's just, you know, your opponent probably doesn't want to touch you yet, but then you untap and you like Spring Leaf Nantuko, and then you play a fetch land, and then you get 2 of these, and then it's like a 5/5. I think that's pretty exciting. So I think, you know, if Cradle Control is looking for more threats that just kind of actually get through damage while they're kind of trying to protect their other game plan, kind of forces your opponent to pay attention to this when they want to be able to hit your White of the Reliquary or your Badgermole Club. So I don't know. It seems like a fun little card that can get really big really quickly, and Ward is awesome. It's so much. It plays so much more interesting than Hexproof, and you know, they're going to have to take a turn off to deal with this at some point in the game. And, you know, those are the edges you can always get in Legacy where that ends up winning or losing a match for you. So be on the lookout for the Battler. All right, and getting to the multicolor, we have 2 cards to talk about here. We have Tam, Mindful First Year. This is 2 mana, 1 and a Simic hybrid for a 2/2 Gorgon Wizard. And each other creature you control has hexproof from each of its colors. You can tap this creature, target creature you control becomes all colors until end of turn. So this is like a really weird Mother of Runes. Obviously protection is way better than hexproof, but this card just really is just, I don't know. It's hard to explain where this card is supposed to go or when you're supposed to play it, because being Simic is just, it's so foreign for these. This is such a Death and Taxes type of card. So being in a color combination that has never had effects like this before is quite interesting. But yeah, again, you know, the Cyanide Draco kind of is super cute with this, but I don't think that's where I would expect this card to show up really, because it's not what that deck is looking for to move up in the meta. But I don't know. I think this card might sneak into some lists, but it's going to take somebody with a bigger brain than me to figure it out. All right, and we have another Simic card here. We have Wistfulness for 3 hybrid Simic. You get a 6/5 elemental incarnation, and when this creature enters, if green was spent to cast it, exile target artifact or enchantment opponent controls. And when this creature enters, if blue was spent to cast it, draw 2 cards and discard a card. And it has Evoke for Simic Hybrid. So obviously, I think this is very obviously a Beans card and no other place. And even then, it's probably just a 1 of, maybe a 2 of, because stuff like Quantum Riddler is really taking over the main strategy of that deck, and you don't really need extra fluff really going on anymore. But this could even be a sideboard option. Green to exile an artifact or enchantment is quite relevant. You can obviously exile a ring. That's going to be the big thing with Wistfulness, or get rid of something out of the affinity list. And casting a Charter Course isn't the worst thing in a pinch. Draw 3 cards and discard a card with Beanstalk out. That's not a bad turn against a control matchup or something if you're playing Beans. So, and then you can tap 5 mana and cast this, and you're going to be extremely happy if you get both modes. You can exile an Urza Saga as well. So I think if you are actually able to cast this, there's going to be a lot of game-winning positions because it is absolutely massive, and only really Swords of Planishers is going to kill it once it's in play. So this is great. I would love to see one of these elemental incarnations be playable, and I think Wistfulness will be the one. And the last card on the set review is a land, the only card from the Commander sets I could find. I think the precons are a little powered down this go around, but we have a land that taps for a colorless, or can tap to add 1 mana of any color and spend this mana only to cast a creature spell. And for 6 in the tap, you can create a 1/1 colorless shapeshifter creature token with Changeling. So we've seen a lot of these cards around. Secluded Courtyard is the most recent one that I've seen being played a lot in Eldrazi. That one lets you activate abilities of creatures, so that's the only thing that if your creature deck did care about that you would want to maybe still play Secluded Courtyard. But I think in Eldrazi specifically, you are able to produce a lot of mana at some point, and making an extra Eldrazi is beneficial in a lot of ways to trigger your Fleshraker. It can trigger your Linebreaker, make it just a little bit bigger, which could be a lot of the difference in some games. So I think this is just kind of a strict upgrade to Secluded Courtyard if your deck just doesn't care about the activated ability side. So kind of going under the radar. I hope Legacy players catch this one. And yeah, that's Lorwyn Eclipsed through a Legacy lens. Let's check out that second collector booster now. All right, let's get into our second Lorwyn Eclipsed collector booster here. Let's see what we got. First one was pretty nice. Ooh, little Painter Servant art card. I'd love to open the real one in here. All right, let's get through these commons pretty quickly here. But ooh, that's a Goblin we just talked about. Happy to have it. Crypt Swap, nice. All right, let's see what we got. Tam, another card we talked about. All right. Saving the good stuff for me here in the last pack. Eventide Shadow. 4 and a black, remove any number of counters among permanents on the battlefield. You draw cards and lose like to the number of counters removed this way. God, they love putting counter stuff in Commander product, huh? Dawnhide Dissident. When I was first reading through this card, I was expecting it to be a little more playable, but it's just a little too slow and janky to get going for our format. Ooh, Aurora Awakener. I was really into this card. It's one of my favorite cards actually in the set. Put it in a 5-color Commander deck, and I'm gonna brew up 5-color sneak attack for Commander. I'm not sure who the Commander is gonna be yet, but I was just thinking about that today actually. And our last card is, oh yes, wow! Look at this Bitter Blossom. That is beautiful. Would have loved Bitter Blossom Bearer, of course, but I will take this and put this in my Ayara Commander deck immediately. Nice. Well, thank you guys for joining me for the set review, and we'll see you this week for some more gameplay.